Hello there, Serpentus once again. This is my Ys VIII, Lacrimosa of Dana White, Inferno difficulty video walkthrough. This is going to be Towering Coral Forest and the boss Serpentus, but before we do that I'm going to be showing you some shopping to give you an example of what I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to be keeping a lot of this in, guys, it's just to kind of give you a guide and a visual reference for myself. So the items that I've hovered across here are all the items that give you strength. So there's the blade rings that are going to give you 10 attack, 10 strength I should say, and then incrementally as they go up higher they'll give you a little bit more. Then I showed you the red cape, which is a really fantastic weapon or accessory that I'm not going to be able to really utilise in this run because of the way the game works. So the red cape, the lower your HP the more damage you do. This can be really good. However, when you enter a boss encounter, it heals you, so you cannot carry low HP into a boss fight to make the most of this utensil. And then when you're in the fight, you have to take a hit to get into range to make it viable. And the point of this run when I was making it was to try and have a pretty clean run, so most of the bosses are no damage. So I can't even use an item I really like. And if I could have used it, the boss fights would have been even quicker because the damage increase is legitimately good. It's a really good tool. So for you guys, if you take a few hits in the boss fight, feel free to go into the boss while wearing that piece of equipment because it will definitely pay off. It's that powerful. You can also put it on your team members, which is something I need to talk about quite early. So in this Ys game, much like the previous two, or Celceta and 7, you run around in a party system where you control one character and two characters will follow you. The characters that follow you will attack using random skills and do all kinds of things, and for the most they do a pretty good job of staying alive. However, they will get damaged over time and they will get put to 1 HP. When your allies go to 1 HP they will stop attacking, but they cannot die. It's a really interesting system. If you ever see a dead member in your team, it's generally your fault, which I like a lot, because if the AI could die, it would be really frustrating. And what you'll notice when I'm doing this run is I'll swap to somebody like Sahad right now, and then when I swap back to Adol, Adol might have had a chunk out of his HP where something's hit him, and that kind of stuff happens a lot. But as long as they're at 1 HP, they will not do anything, so you lose out on their damage, but they don't die. And there are a couple of strategies that you can use exploiting the way this system works. So the capes are really good for this. There are accessories in this game that enable your characters to do things as their HP lowers. The damage one is good while the HP is lowering, but when it gets to 1 it's worthless because they stop attacking. The only good thing about them having 1 HP and a red cape on, or that red medallion, is if you swap to them, you can play as a character who now has increased damage because of their HP. For instance, when you first get Hummel in this game, Hummel is really strong and his extra skill is the strongest thing you can do at that moment. Now if you give him a red cape and you let the AI beat him up while you're controlling Adol during a boss fight, when you swap back to him, you use his extra skill with that really low HP, giving it the best damage it can physically get. You're going to get a lot more leverage out of that move, which is a really good tactic to use. And building from the idea of that tactic is the tactic that I recommend even more so. So, on the bottom right, do you notice how the steering wheel, I don't even know the name of that particular ship wheel thing. That's how nautical I am. I'm not a very good pirate. But the SP is built around the side of it, as you can see the blue meter that goes up. You can see the skills inside of it, but you can also see it has a gold background that's swelling right now. So that gold background symbolises that I can now do the extra skill. The extra skill is the move where it does a cinematic super limit break, like you would in a Final Fantasy, where you do a lot of damage, you get some really nice anime artwork, and then you get multiple hits, and a really good example of collision right now stopping me from climbing a hill. Extra skill is some of the most damage you can do in the game. It's really useful, but it builds up very slowly. The best way to get extra skill back is to rest. If you rest at a campfire or if you rest at the castaway village, you will get it all back, and I recommend you get into the habit of, after a boss fight when you've used it, resting to get it back. I almost see no reason to use it against enemies unless you're in a bad spot. If you get into a spot where you don't think you can come out alive, or if you just want to use it because you like using it, feel free. However, understand that the cooldown on it is pretty large, and you have to hit things a lot to get it back on Inferno especially. The way around this is the gold cape. The gold cape and a few other accessories give you extra meter when you take damage or when your HP is low. So if you have two characters at 1 HP because they've been bullied, and they have that cape where you build extra meter at low life, it seems, and I don't know if this is 100% true, but it feels like it is, it seems like you get extra meter even though they're not acting. So I don't think it's based off of damage, I just think it's based off of low HP threshold. And when I had this equipped against the final boss, I was able to do 2 extra attacks on the boss. When I took it off, I only ever was able to do 1, and I hit the boss the exact same amount of times. So it pretty much solidified in my mind that if you want to equip your team with any low HP item, I would definitely recommend using the one that gives you extra meter for both being damaged and for having low HP. Because at the beginning of a boss, you can use your extra skill, and by the end of the boss, because the bosses are so long, because you have to hit them so much, you'll probably be able to do another one. And it's pretty much one of the best setups for dealing high damage and making fights quicker than they usually would be, in my opinion. And the great part about it is, it doesn't take any skill. You don't have to guard, you don't have to dodge, you don't have to have, speaking of using the ability to get you out of a bad situation, I didn't realise I'd pulled 2 of these, and at this moment in time, I've done this entire beach without saving, and if I get hit, I have to do the beach again, and I really didn't want to do that. So, yeah, there you go. I used the super ability, which is a really cool animation, and I like it a lot. Speaking of 1 HP, as you notice, Laxia is kind of bummed at this moment. She's been injured a lot. Something that you've seen me do in this video that's really important as well. Did you notice how I went up to that place of interest and it showed me a landscape and populated it on my map? You want to do that as much as you can. Discovering locations, it's a bit of a sundry side quest standard JRPG thing, but later on in this game you're going to be able to warp between those locations, so it'll give you an even greater breadth of distance to cover in the warp, and it's really useful, so that's why I recommend doing as many as you can. Additionally, something I should have mentioned earlier but I haven't, but I'm assuming that you've seen me do it, so you've adopted it yourself if you weren't already doing it. The fastest way to move in this game, guys, is to jump and roll. So if you press jump and then you press roll quickly, you will do a hop followed by a forward roll. And you can chain these together very quickly. Each of the characters has their own speed, but kind of fundamentally, the girls move faster than the boys, so if you want to be as fast as you can be, you want to always be controlling the female members of your party. And to know that you're doing it correctly, when you do a standard roll, there is no kind of jump pad, like glyph that appears, so you'll just do the standard roll. But if you're jumping and rolling, you will see almost a blue air hike-esque pad that comes off your character that symbolises that you jumped into the dodge, and then you just chain those. I have jump on A, and I have roll on B, so I just slide my finger in a flick from A to B, A to B, A to B, A to B, just like that. And I chain these movements that I'm doing right now. It's not the most difficult thing to do. It's something you're going to be doing a whole lot. You'll notice I never run in this game. I find the run to be just kind of pointless. And the cool thing about being able to execute button presses while on the go is it keeps your hands warm. One of the worst things about playing games in the winter is when your hands get cold, because you know the feeling. There's nothing worse than having cold hands when you're trying to do something, especially if you've ever played Guitar Hero. Playing Guitar Hero with cold hands is a nightmare. So keeping your hands warm, keeping that blood flowing is one of the main reasons why I do it. I apologise to anybody that gets offended or gets annoyed by me constantly just It is quite, obnoxious, but I just don't mind it. I like doing it. So if you're wondering why I'm doing these crazy forward flips repeatedly, it's just because that's the quickest movement method in this game to my knowledge. But moving forward into this next area, be careful coming over here. There's a couple of wolves on this side. The only reason to come this way is so that you can get that piece of mineral over here. The minerals in this game, these little deposits that you break that give you items, are really useful for compounding a whole host of different things you're going to need. The cornucopia of items needed for synthesis in this game is all over the spectrum, but every little helps. And I've tried safe scumming, I've tried boundary scumming, I've tried all the methods I can think to try to make them replenish those deposits, and I think it bases itself off a timer. So, unlike some games where if you go through 2 loading zones, it will refresh something, or if you reload, it will reload the status of the world and refresh it. In this game, I think it takes like a minute. I think you have to time it out. I don't know that for certain because, once again, folks, a lot of the information that I want to know about this game I can't find. And it's kind of interesting because technically this game came out on the PS Vita in 2017, I think. So, the PC version came out mid-2018. The game has been out a while now, and you'd think that all this information had already been known, and maybe it is in some places, but I just couldn't find it when I was searching. I was checking the wikis, but the wikis were kind of weak. I was looking on GameFAQs, I was looking on some of the speedrunner forums, and outside of all the speed tricks, they didn't really have the answers I was looking for. So I cannot be the bastion of information that you're hoping to find, because I was looking to find it as well, and I didn't do that. What I did find, though, which is worth mentioning, over on GameFAQs, they have a FAQ for this game that is a bunch of images and statistics and text, which I think is really well done. It shows you maps of the locations, it shows you what all the items are, it shows you the stats of the bosses on normal, which I don't know how accurate those stats are, but they're a really good baseline to understand what you're coming up against. So big props to the person that made that. I was referencing it a few times, because it's just pretty interesting to see how they play the game differently to myself. What I will say, though, is it is a very subjective walkthrough, that one, as all walkthroughs are, because every boss I found that he said was really, really difficult, I found to be really easy, and some of the ones that he found to be really easy, I thought was very tough. So once again, difficulty subjective, so shout out to that. But coming back to Castaway Village, I'm going to be doing the soft fibers for Laxia. It's going to enable them to build luxurious curtains, and it's just going to be moving towards getting better features, better items, and I'm going to keep a couple of these in at the beginning just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing, and then towards the middle part of the walkthrough all of this will be omitted. But the Warrior Seal and the Hope Stone are 2 things I want to talk about. The Warrior Seal is an ability to, every time you use a skill, it will give you an additional point towards leveling that skill, and you can get several versions of these. If you're looking to get a higher level of a skill quickly, that's the tool you want to use. So you'll notice, because I don't have any items that I need to put on Adol at the moment, I'm going to give him the Warrior Seal just so that I can make some of his abilities better. It's not mandatory, but it's nice to be building towards something extra, or that's what I feel like. The Hope Stone is the Hope Stone, sorry, I think I said that weird. That is a different kind of item. At this moment in time, it's the most strength we can get, because it's an item that gives us 20 strength and 20 defense and like 100 HP. The 100 HP and the defense sounds great for people that love that stuff. All I care about is the strength. Right now, it's the equivalent of having 2 blade rings on. And when you can wear it with the blade ring, that is a 30 strength increase. And right now, our strength is probably like 100 or something. So that's a lot of strength for this moment in the game. The problem is, you need a resource called Glow Rock. And I don't know the best way to get Glow Rocks in this game. Glow Rocks are an item that have eluded me for a long time. I know that you can come to this particular dungeon that we're in right now, the Towering Coral Forest. If you come here at night time, which you can only unlock much later in the game, you can then farm Glow Rocks, and that's what I'm going to do to get an armlet that blinds you but gives you 75 strength. However, getting them reliably and consistently I found to be very difficult. In my first run through of Inferno, I managed to get maybe 15 of them, and I got one of those bracelets, and then I never went back. In this run, I managed to get dozens of them in the first attempt, so I must have had RNG on my side, but if you have problems getting Glow Rocks, I know how you feel, because it's a really big pain in the dick. And speaking of pains in the dick, Tigranion, this guy here, this evolved crab guy, he's level 11, which means if we wail on him, we will get skills, and that's why I'm going to be fighting all of these enemies, hopefully. However, he has the same move that the person over on the White Sand Coast had, where he jumps into the sky and he comes down. It's not a difficult move to dodge, and it's not a difficult move to parry, but it has 2 properties you need to be aware of. The tracking on it is really good, so you'll think you get away from it and it'll still land on you. And in this environment, because there are multiple tiers of geometry, if you're just below it and it lands above you, it will still hit you. So you can do a perfect flash guard, but because it didn't land on you, you didn't guard it, and then you're in the active frames of the AoE, and that's happened to me a few times, so be very, very careful. And then something I haven't mentioned that I really should have. Did you see the blue plant that I just struck then when I was fighting? Those plants are awesome. They're essentially a refill for SP. So if you ever see those glowing flowers, use a couple skills on an enemy and then go and strike it and replenish what you've just used. They give you a decent chunk as well. It really is no joke, and there's a part of me that wishes that the game utilised them a little bit more during bosses, because I think it could be a really interesting system of micromanaging resources. But there's only one boss that really does that, and then it doesn't do it the way you think it's going to do, which is really frustrating. So later on there's a spider boss, which, you know, JRPG spider boss is kind of hand in hand, isn't it? During this fight, there are these crystals that you can strike, and throughout the dungeon when you got to that area, when you struck those crystals it stunned all the enemies in the immediate vicinity. If those crystals stunned the boss, I think that would be immaculate design and really, really cool. But they don't. They really don't. And it makes no sense. The only thing I can think of, the only utility for those items in that fight, are to stun the mobs of enemies that the boss summons. But if you're using the Force Edge, which is what I'm going to use when we get there, you can kill all the enemies as they spawn just by virtue of how ridiculously overpowered that move is. So it's one of those things where it's like a null entity and a wasted opportunity, and I really don't understand it. But if you farm this area at nighttime for glow rocks, the vines in front of me here that I can't climb, when you climb up this area at night, there is an opportunity to get glow rocks there, which is a pretty good one too. I think it might even be 2 stashes of it. That's interesting too. There are times when you jump and you press attack and you get the downward thrust instead of the standard aerial move. I have no idea why it does that. In my mind, you should only ever get the downward thrust is if you dodge in midair, because you've got forward momentum, thus you do the downward thrust. Every time you try to jump in the air and come down on the sword without pressing B in the air, you will do an aerial combo. Every time you try to do an aerial combo, you'll do the fucking downward stab. And it's this weird bullshit, because the aerial combo, the third hit gives you extra air, the first 2 hits give you hang time. So you use it to extend air, whereas the downward thrust is the complete antithesis of that. So why these inputs get confused is probably a human error, it's probably my fault, but I just don't understand why it does it sometimes and other times it doesn't. And it might not sound like the biggest deal, and it's not, but it is against one boss, because if it didn't work the way it does, you could really destroy the chameleon. And if you fought the chameleon on Inferno, he's an arsehole. So I would love to just humiliate him, but alas, it fucks you up. But here is a Guaranga. This is a creature that drops a piece of Guaranga claw or Guaranga flesh, and you can use it to get some pretty cool items early on. But it's a tough guy, don't even be under any illusion. Because this enemy is armoured, and the only person who does decent damage to him is Sahad, you have to break it, and this thing takes a pounding. This thing takes the kind of damage that traditional bosses in normal video games take, and then you realise it's just an enemy, and the boss coming up is going to take 10 times what that dude took. That's when you're welcome to exactly what Inferno mode in Ys means. It means you are going to hit things more than you ever thought possible, and you're going to question your sanity while doing it. But here is Serpentus. He's level 13. I'm only level 10. I would have leveled the extra levels to kill him, but I know that he's not too bad, so I just kind of got on with it. But there's a couple of things to bear in mind in this fight. That's the first one. For some reason on the PC version that I have, when he does his breath attack like that, it can really mess with the graphics. It's kind of rare for him to do it all that often, but you might get 2 to 3 of those moves in a given fight. The other thing that's really frustrating here is if he pushes you up against the rim of this arena, you can't see your character because there is a lip, and it makes it very difficult to understand what's going on. And there it is again, killing the graphics. But the strategy couldn't be more simple, guys. You're going to chain flash guards using the wave move with Sahad until the boss has kinda low life, and then get a flash guard and then do your EX move. Because if you flash guard a boss and then you use your EX move, every hit of your EX will be a critical, and it's the best way to get the most damage. And a fun fact as well, I have footage of me killing this boss. It dies, I level up, and then it attacks again and kills me. No idea why that happens, but you need to be aware of it, folks, because this game is really buggy. The tree boss later on can have a phase where it never gives you a weak point and you can never kill it. Really bizarre. So if you get any of those bugs, I feel for you because I got all of them and they were really frustrating. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.